watched a man's life end in the mud 32 years ago, and I didn't say a word to save the person they blamed for it. My silence wasn't a mistake. It was a calculation. It was 1994, a Tuesday night in O'Neill, Nebraska. The rain wasn't heavy, but it was persistent, the kind of drizzle that turns the blacktop into a mirror and makes the air smell like wet iron and old regret. I was sitting in my truck outside Miller's Tavern, letting the heater hum against my shins while I waited for the windshield to clear. I saw the whole thing. A dark sedan, a Lincoln heavy and chrome-grilled, came swinging out of the alleyway too fast. It didn't even tap the brakes when it clipped the girl. Her name was Sarah Jenkins. She was 19, worked at the diner, and she was just crossing to her car with a paper bag over her head to keep dry. The sound wasn't like the movies. It wasn't a crash. It was a wet, heavy thud, like a sack of grain hitting the floor. She went down and the Lincoln paused, just for a heartbeat. I saw the driver's face through the side window for a split second. When he glanced back, it was Bill Henderson. Bill was the county supervisor. He was my boss's boss. He was the man who had signed my promotion paperwork at the land records office just 2 weeks prior. Bill didn't get out. He stepped on the gas and vanished into the gray curtain of the rain. I sat there. I didn't move. My hand was on the door handle, but my fingers felt like they were made of lead. I thought about my mortgage. I thought about my wife, Martha, and how we were finally caught up on the medical bills from her surgery. I watched Sarah lie there in the puddle. I watched the water turn dark around her. 5 minutes later, another car pulled in. It was an old, rusted-out Chevy. A young black man named Elias Vance stepped out. He saw her. He ran to her. He knelt in the mud, screaming for someone to help, his hands getting covered in her blood as he tried to find a pulse that wasn't there anymore. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, they found him kneeling over her. They saw the blood on his coat. They saw a man who didn't belong in that part of town at that hour. I was still in my truck. An officer, a young kid named Miller, tapped on my window. He asked if I'd seen anything. He looked tired and spooked. I looked at Elias Vance, pinned against the hood of his car in handcuffs, shouting that he'd just found her, that he was trying to help. Then I thought about Bill Henderson's face in that Lincoln. Oh, I didn't see a thing, officer, I said. My voice didn't even shake. The rain was too thick. I just got here myself. I lied because I was a coward. I lied because I wanted to keep my pension. Elias Vance was 22 years old. He had a scholarship to the state college. He had a mother who worked 3 jobs. The state's attorney called it a clear-cut hit and run with a secondary assault. They found a dent on Elias's Chevy that had been there for 3 years, but they said it matched the impact. They said his panic was guilt. I sat in the back of the courtroom during the sentencing. I wore my best suit. I felt the weight of the silver watch the county had given me for 15 years of loyal service. 20 years. That was the judge's word. 20 years for a crime he didn't commit, while I went back to my desk and filed property deeds. The years didn't just pass, they accumulated like dust in the corners of a house you've stopped cleaning. My silence wasn't a one-time event. It became a career. A month after Elias Vance was sent to the state penitentiary, Bill Henderson stopped by my office at the county building. He didn't say thank yous. He didn't mention the rain or this girl. He just stood in the doorway, smelling of peppermint and expensive wool, and told me there was a budget opening for a senior administrator. I took the job. I took the 30% raise. I took the better health insurance for Martha. I told myself I was doing it for her. Every time I looked at the local paper and saw a small blurb about the Vance appeal being denied, and I'd turn the page and focus on the grocery store coupons. But the truth is a parasitic thing. It feeds on the parts of you that you think are safe. Martha would ask me why I didn't sleep. She'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find me sitting in the kitchen, staring at the humming refrigerator, my hands flat on the linoleum. I told her it was just the stress of the new position. I told her my back hurt. I never told her that every time I closed my eyes, I saw Elias Vance's face when they read the verdict. He didn't scream. He just looked hollowed out, like someone had reached inside him and turned off the lights. I saw Bill Henderson at the 4th of July parades. I saw him at the Christmas galas. He'd always find me in the crowd, offer a firm handshake, and hold it just a second too long. "Good to see you, Arthur," he'd say, and his eyes hard and clear, doing good work, keeping things steady. We were partners in a murder. I was the silent partner, the one who didn't get blood on his hands, just the gold watch at the end of the line. Then there was the letter. It came about 6 years into Elias's sentence. It was addressed to me personally, sent to the office. The handwriting was cramped, the ink cheap. "Mr. Thorne," it started. "I know you were there that night. I saw your truck. I'm not asking for money. I'm just asking you to tell them what the weather was like. Please, my mother is sick. She won't last another year. Just tell them you saw a dark car." I didn't finish reading it. I didn't even keep it. I took it to the basement of the records building, to the industrial shredder. I watched the paper turn into white confetti. I watched my last chance to be a decent human being vanish into a bin of waste. I went home and took Martha to dinner. I bought her a new coat. I was a good provider. But I stopped looking at myself in the mirror when I shaved. I learned to look at my chin, my jaw, the bridge of my nose, anywhere but the eyes, because those eyes belonged to a man who had traded a 22-year-old's life for a steady mortgage. Bill Henderson died of a stroke 3 years ago. The whole town turned out for his funeral. They named a park after him. I stood by his grave and felt a strange, cold relief. The only other person who knew what happened was under 6 feet of Nebraska soil. I was safe. I could finally breathe. I retired 6 months later. I opened a small hardware shop on the edge of town, a quiet place where I could sell screws and paint and talk about the weather with people who didn't know the secrets I kept in my marrow. I thought the story was over. I thought the debt had been canceled by the passage of time. Then, 2 weeks ago, the bell over the shop door rang. A man walked in. He was in his 50s now. His hair was graying at the temples, and his skin was weathered, but his eyes were exactly the same as they were in that courtroom. It was Elias Vance. He didn't look angry. He looked exhausted. He walked up to the counter, took off a faded baseball cap, and looked me right in the face. "Mr. Thorne?" he asked. I couldn't speak. I felt the air leave my lungs, leaving only the cold, metallic taste of 1994. "Yes," I said, "that's me, Arthur Thorne." My hands were trembling under the counter, so I gripped the edge of the wood until my knuckles turned white. I waited for the accusation. I waited for him to reach across and wrap those large, scarred hands around my throat. I deserved it. I had spent 30 years imagining this moment, the day the ghost finally came home to collect the debt. Elias didn't move. He just looked around the shop at the rows of galvanized nails and the smell of cedar sawdust. "I saw the help wanted sign in the window," he said quietly. I swallowed hard. You're looking for work?" "I've been out 6 months," Elias said. "Turns out 20 years in the state pen doesn't look great on a resume. Even with a degree, I finished behind bars. People see the name, they see the record, and the door closes before I can even say hello." He looked back at me, and there was no malice in his eyes. There was something worse, a weary, misplaced respect. "But I remembered you, Mr. Thorne. I remembered you from the trial. You were the only one." "The only one what, Elias?" I whispered. "The only one who didn't lie," he said. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my chest. "Everyone else," Elias continued, his voice thick with a memory he couldn't shake. "The bartender, the people in the street, they all suddenly remembered seeing me running. They remembered me acting suspicious. They wanted a monster, and they were happy to build one out of thin air just so they could sleep better at night." He leaned in a little, his eyes locking onto mine. "But you stood up there under oath, and you told them the truth. You said you didn't see me do it. You told them the rain was too thick to see anything. You were the only honest man in that whole courtroom, Arthur. You didn't try to frame me just because I was the easy target." I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. He thought my silence was a form of integrity. He thought my cowardice was a shield I had held up for him. He didn't realize that by saying I saw nothing, I had stripped away his only alibi. If I had said I saw the Lincoln, he would have walked out of that courtroom a free man. By pretending to be neutral, I had signed his death warrant. "I figured," Elias said, a small, sad smile touching his lips, "that if there was one man in this town who might give me a fair shake, it would be the man who refused to bear false witness against me when the whole world was screaming for my head." I looked at him, really looked at him. His youth was gone. His mother was dead. She'd passed away in his 10th year of lockup. His dreams of being an architect or a teacher had been ground into the dust of a prison yard. And he was standing here, thanking me for the very thing that had destroyed him. I started, but my voice broke. "The job, it's mostly heavy lifting, stocking the back. It's not much. I don't mind the weight, he said. I've been carrying a lot more than lumber for a long time. I hired him not because I wanted to help him, but because I was too terrified to do anything else. I was trapped in his gratitude. It was a suffocating, gilded cage. For the next month, we worked side by side. He was the best employee I'd ever had. He was punctual, he was polite, and he was incredibly kind to the customers, even the ones who recognized him and whispered behind their hands. But every time he thanked me for the paycheck, or every time he told me how much he appreciated me seeing him as a human being, a new crack formed in my soul. I started drinking again, just a little at first, a finger of scotch before bed to stop the rain from falling in my dreams. Then 2 fingers, then half a bottle. Well, Martha noticed. She asked me what was wrong. She liked Elias. She thought it was charitable of me to hire an ex-con. "You've got a good heart, Arthur," she told me one night, rubbing my shoulders while I sat at the kitchen table. "Most men would have been too afraid of the gossip. You're doing a brave thing." Brave. The word felt like a hot coal in my mouth. Yesterday, Elias brought a box of old files to my desk. He'd found them in the back of the storage room. They were county records from the 90s, stuff I'd taken from the office when I retired, things I should have destroyed but couldn't bring myself to touch. He set them down and his hand brushed against a folder. Henderson, he read the name on the tab. Bill Henderson. Wasn't he the one who gave the keynote at the police gala the year I was put away? My heart stopped. Inside that folder wasn't just county business. Inside that folder was a copy of the Lincoln's repair bill from a shop 3 towns over, a bill I had processed and buried 30 years ago. Elias's fingers lingered on the edge of the Henderson folder. My heart wasn't just racing. It was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I could see the sweat on his neck, the way his shoulders, still strong despite the years of prison labor, hunched over my desk. "Mr. Henderson," Elias said again, his voice thoughtful. He was a powerful man. Everyone said he was the one who pushed the police to close my case so fast. Said he wanted the town to heal from the tragedy. "He's dead, Elias," I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from the bottom of a well. "Put it back. It's just old tax records. It doesn't matter anymore." He looked at me, and for a second, I thought he saw the rot. I thought he saw the 30 years of lies layered like sediment in my eyes. But he just nodded, closed the folder, and set it back on the pile. "You're right, no sense digging up ghosts. They've had their time." He walked back into the warehouse, the bell on the door chiming as a customer entered. I sat there alone in the office, and I looked at that folder. I didn't need to open it to see the repair bill. I didn't need to open it to see the notes I'd written in the margins of the county budget that year. I told you I lied because I was a coward. I told you I wanted to keep my pension. That was the lie I told myself to keep from hanging myself in the garage 20 years ago. The truth is, Sarah Jenkins wasn't just a girl from the diner. She was a clerk in my office. She was 20 years old, and she had a habit of staying late to double-check the ledgers. She'd found the discrepancies. She'd found the $40,000 Bill Henderson and I had siphoned into a shell account for the land development project. She'd come to me, her eyes wide with fear and misplaced trust, and showed me the numbers. She thought I was the good man who would fix it. I told her I'd handle it. I told her to meet me behind Miller's Tavern that Tuesday night so we could go to the sheriff together, away from the prying eyes of the courthouse. I didn't wait in that truck for the rain to stop. I waited in that truck to make sure she was standing exactly where she was supposed to be when Bill's Lincoln came around the corner. I wasn't a witness. I was the architect. I had called Bill that afternoon. I told him she wouldn't be quiet. I told him where she'd be. I didn't tell him to kill her. I just told him she was the problem. And when he hit her, and I saw her body bounce off that chrome grill, I didn't feel horror. I felt a cold, sharp relief. The problem was gone. Then Elias Vance pulled into the lot. I watched him get out of his car. I watched him run to her, and I realized in that moment that God, if he exists, had handed me a gift. A boy who didn't belong. A boy the town was already primed to hate. I didn't stay silent out of fear. I stayed silent because Elias was my masterpiece. He was the perfect screen to hide the blood on my own hands. Every day now, Elias comes into my shop. He sweeps the floors. He stocks the shelves. He smiles at me with a warmth that makes my skin crawl. He treats me like the father he lost to the prison system. He thinks I'm the man who didn't lie. Last night, he brought me a small wood carving he'd made in the shop. It was a bird, a sparrow, wings spread wide. To my mentor, he'd etched into the base, the only man who saw the truth. I took the bird, I thanked him, and then I went home, sat in the dark and listened to the rain hit the roof. I'm 64 years old. My lungs are heavy with the dust of this town. My heart is a calcified knot of secrets. Elias thinks he's free because he's out of prison. But as I watch him through the office window, whistle a tune while he helps a neighbor carry a bag of mulch, I realize the truth. He's not the one who's still serving a sentence. I am. And the worst part, the part that keeps me from ever finding peace, is that he will never stop thanking me for it.